All right, welcome back to another episode of the Relationship Series. My name is Gina Spataro, and over here is my wonderful brother, Sam Spataro, who recently just uploaded some amazing work that he did at a cottage up north somewhere. And if you're not following him, I completely suggest you follow him to see his work, especially if you need anything done around the house. It's outstanding, absolutely outstanding. How was that job, Sam?
It was great. So for some of you who don't know, aside from the coaching, consulting, I also have a construction company where we specialize in custom stone and brick masonry on homes. And we've had a great opportunity over the past 2 weeks to really come through and help out a client who was under a bit of strain without getting into too many details, and we came to the rescue, helped them out under budget, under time, and
Wonderful.
obviously you've seen the pictures. I mean, the finished product was just astounding. We're so happy, they were happy, and we're just able that we could help them out.
100%. And how was the rest of your week?
Great so far.
Yeah?
No, dinner was good tonight. My wife made a nice dinner. She went out with her friends, and our youngest son was having some struggles with doing homework, which took almost all day.
Wow.
Until I started working the emotional side of the spectrum. And within about 30 minutes, he started to wake up, come to, and found a way to break through his funk, and was so proud of him. So that was kind of cool.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And our daughter your niece got to watch the boys for about 20 minutes while I dropped the wife off. So she was excited about that.
That's great.
Yeah, no, what a beautiful day. The past 3 days of it, but even today, it's unreal. Like, we're in the end of August.
Yeah.
And we're having like Mexico weather still. This is unreal. And I'm not sure where you are in the world and you're watching this, but the weather here this summer has been probably the hottest summer we've ever had.
Yeah, honestly, this is what I was saying, right? Like, even for businesses that were reopening for COVID and stuff, like, how fortunate were they that they've had a summer like this where they've been able to open up their patios, where they've been able to invite people in, and create their business once again. Because if it was a rainy summer like we've had, it for sure the outcome wouldn't be the way it was, for sure. So no, we've been very, very fortunate. And we have Sadie in the house tonight.
You have who?
Look at the picture down below. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh my God, yeah. Sadie's in the house.
Sadie's in the house. So on that note, we are going to get into our topic tonight. We're going to try and keep it short. But the top 5 questions to ask someone that you are dating, maybe not the first date, maybe not the second date, but definitely as we get older, and we become more mature in our mindset and what we want, our wants and our needs, it's kind of like, all right, let's not play any games. If you're on the same path, I'm on the same path, then hey, like, maybe connect. If not, best to go our own way and navigate somewhere else, right? Like, you don't really waste time when you're older for many reasons. When you're younger, it's different. You can explore, experience, get that more heartfelt feel of the relationship, the honeymoon stage, which lasts a little bit longer. But anyway, so the top 5 questions you should ask someone as you're starting to date them. So this is a really important one. Number 1 is, how important is intimacy to you? And it's so funny because for men, a lot of women would be like, oh my gosh, that's going to be like a top thing on their priority. However, there's a lot of men with like low libidos, and it may not be a priority to them because maybe they haven't figured out how to outsource or help themselves in that area, right? So how do you feel about this one?
I would say intimacy is probably, if not the most important part to a relationship. And here's why. I once heard that if you don't have intimacy, you have a friendship.
Yeah.
And you didn't get into a relationship to have only a friendship. I mean, intimacy is a component that not only connects us, it's healing, it's stress relieving, it makes you feel wanted, desired, and so many other things. But if you're much like probably not for you, maybe it's different, but I grew up in a very masculine work environment. And a lot of the conversations that I heard really early on when I started to date was men who were married. They're in their 40s at the time. I was in my early 20s. And just how horrible and horrific marriage was, for the meaning that, there was no intimacy. And one gentleman that I work with, I still remember this to this day. And he says, Sam, I have sex with my wife every day. We pass by each other in the hallway and she says, fuck you. And I say, fuck you too.
Wow.
So he says they had hallway sex every day. And I just think, man, like what's the point of getting into a relationship if you're not having any intimacy? I mean, yeah, as things progress along in a relationship, things change, responsibilities change. There's money, there's stress, there's kids. But intimacy is one of those things that should never be forgotten or put to the bottom line, even if you've had children, whatever it might be. Intimacy is in my opinion, one of the most important factors. And I know for myself in my relationship, as time progressed, it got less and less and less. I mean, we get comfortable, we get complacent, we become less appreciative. We don't go that extra mile to do things for one another. And maybe that spark starts to fizzle. Yeah. And as you start to have kids and stack on career and all these other things, it can maybe even disappear at some point. And, that's a whole nother ball game altogether. But what really matters is you really have to pay attention to what really inspired to be so new and fresh and frequent in the beginning, and what allowed it to change as you progressed.
Yeah. And I think too, people enter, how we talked about people enter relationships with the fairy tale ideal, right? Well, people enter relationships, and as soon as they sign that paper or they get comfortable, they assume that the work stops, right? When we all know that that's when the work should begin. And when they hear narratives from family members or friends where it's like, oh yeah, it just drops off after a while, it's normal. That becomes the narrative, just like so many other things. So you get to choose what the narrative is. You get to choose where the work lies. You get to choose, how attracted you are to your significant other, if you can remain attractive for them, if you can be spontaneous, the 6 human needs, variety, uncertainty, that kind of stuff, right? Where it's like the balance, when the scale is tipped, of course there's going to be a decline. But like I told you before, it's the awareness of it, the subconscious becoming your conscious, and you actually being able to do the work, right? And I think that's where it lies. If you have one significant other within the relationship who understands this a little bit, then you can go into it with more of a mindset where it's like, okay, I get it. I see where we're lacking. I see where the scale is tipped. This is where we need to go from here. Maybe I need to be the teacher and the one that's creating the spontaneity and, getting the spark back. But I think it's all on a subconscious level. And once you become conscious of it, that's when you can start really doing the work, because you are you're very aware of it. And how many people would you say are, and they may be starting to, wake up and see and connect the dots, but I don't think it should be a narrative that people settle for.
Well, I think there's a point of being conscious and ignorant.
Yeah.
Ignorance is being uneducated. It's not knowing really what to do.
Yeah.
I've been in a relationship with the same person for 20 years. We've got 3 children. She has a career. I have a business. We have a busy life, right? Yeah. And there has been times where, the intimacy is lacking, or maybe not thereof, which I find fulfilling, or maybe likewise. And I don't want to get into the details, but I have a very healthy, intimate relationship, even after 20 years, even after 3 children. And I think really what it comes down to, maybe when it comes to men who are watching this, and maybe you've been in a relationship with your wife for a long time and you really don't know where to start, the very first thing you could do, and this is a major thing, guys, a huge, huge thing, is you don't have to buy her gifts and flowers. Just give her presents. Yeah. Make her feel like you are there. You're not thinking about what the next step. You're not trying to solve her world issues. You're just there in her presence, listening to her day, and no further. And when it comes to men, ladies, what you want to do is make him feel like he is everything and the only thing to you in the world, and he will do whatever it takes to fulfill you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think on that note, let's move to number 2. Great point. another question you can ask is, do you like adventure and spontaneity? Because, you know, you have the introverts of the world and the extroverts of the world, you know, the social butterflies, et cetera, people that might like daredevil, you know, adventures, or some people might just like a walk along the path on the lakeshore, you know? So you have to see also, you know, do your interests mesh? Are they extreme enough that, you know, you could feel uncomfortable within the relationship? Could it be complementary after a while? Do you see it as a positive where it's like, oh, this person could push me to become the best version of myself out of my comfort zone? But it was funny because I was watching one of these dating documentary things online, and this one woman was so, I don't even know if you would call her introverted, but very self-aware, and self-absorbed. And she right away was like, oh, that guy is too adventurous for me. I like to stay home and, you know, just do my thing here. So she let him go. But I think it's a very important thing. Like for me, I like going out for walks and bike rides and, you know, trying new things. You know, would I, you know, dive out of a plane? I don't know. Maybe one day if I get the courage. But what do you feel about that? Asking someone up front.
So I think there's a very simple approach to this, and this goes down to the 6 human needs theory, which is that all human beings have 6 essential needs, and that's certainty, uncertainty, significance, love and connection, growth and contribution. When you're talking about adventure and spontaneity, that's someone who welcomes variety and uncertainty into their lives. Where you're talking about people who are homebodies, they love certainty, they like to feel comfortable and complacent and don't really like to do new things. And they maybe are very introverted, and that's kind of cool. And there are those who are the opposite of that. And when you get into the relationship, I mean, you know, they said, Tony Robbins has said on a couple of his podcasts that, you know, what you have in common makes a great relationship, but what makes you have uncommon is what makes it spark. Now, I think when it comes to the human needs, that doesn't apply, because it's very important that you find the needs that are most important to you to be almost similar, because or else you're going to feel like you're on opposite spectrum when it comes to adventure, when it comes to spontaneity, when it comes to what brings spark and vitality to your life. And you could eventually clash. You almost feel like you're dying inside because you almost feel like you're walking it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. So, and I totally get it. I totally get, you know, people feeling like they want their significant other to join them, and it's almost like pulling teeth for them, you know. So you have to weigh it out on the importance on that scale for you completely. Next question, which is a huge important one. How important is marriage? How do you feel about this?
You know what? Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Let's go back to the old Sam 10, 20 years ago. I would say, is there anything other than marriage when it comes to relationships as you get older? Now, if you get the new evolved Sam that understands kind of like where we are in society today, I'd say it's as important as you think it is.
Yeah.
In today's dynamic, there's so many different variables that have shifted and changed when it comes to marriage, the meaning of it, the role of marriages. And I think that is probably the most important thing when it comes to marriage is it important to you in today's world? You know, and really what it comes down to is, I think in today where, you know, there's such a broad spectrum of what relationships are and what they're not, you can really be open-minded to kind of feel like going in a direction that is welcoming and good for you and nurturing to what you see, that meaning of what a relationship is. You know, marriage to me, you know, is kind of a term, you know, now that I kind of think of it, because if we look at relationships that ended up marriage, you know, it's not a license for success. Right. You know, it's more or less something that has been, we looked into this the other day. It's like, goes back to like 1350 AD or something like that. And I can't remember the exact, you know, maybe we'll share it later on. But I think really what it comes down to, is it something that you want to do? Is it something that's important to you today? Maybe not so much. I mean, I will probably tell my kids to do what they think is best for them.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's not a conversation that our parents would have had with us or their parents, but I think really what it comes down to, even for I'm going to say for my boys, the conversation might be different from my girls, is that marriage is a lot different today than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, where, you know, anyway, I don't want to get into the nitty and gritty. I'm going to leave it at that because that's a whole nother conversation. I think the importance of marriage in today's modern world in 2020 really has to translate into who you are today, what you believe a relationship is meant to be. If it's meant to be some formal thing where you go and get married in front of a pastor or a priest and have a big party of people, great. If to you having a relationship without going to marriage or that has a certificate and you have a set of values and rules and beliefs that will encompass you through everything, well, that's fine too. I think really what it comes down to is what is going to work for you and what's important.
Yeah. And I truthfully just want to put at a point, you know, I have never been the type to idealize about getting married or, you know, the dress or walking down the aisle. Like that was never something that was something I was striving for. Did I want a relationship that was meaningful? Of course. But I have to say something as I have been reading and seeing things over and over again. I understand why women may need to get married, and I may also understand why men may not want to. Women, I think for women wanting to get married, it's a security for them, right? So I think more women are pushing it so that they can feel safe, right? And for men, they're scared because they're such at a disadvantage when it comes to if something goes wrong. So being in my late 30s now, you know, not seeing the value of marriage as a woman, I kind of see why women want to get married.
So here's my question to you.
Yes.
You were raised in a family where everybody was married.
Yes.
You've gone in a different direction.
Right.
So my question, obviously the question is, how important is marriage? What made you make that shift to go in a different direction?
Just because, you know, for me, when people are talking about love and marriage and, you know, happy families, it's like, well, I don't see a lot of that. And if signing a paper means that I'm signing up for that too, I don't really want it. However, I see the importance of it being for a woman than a man. And just for, you know, safety, security, a lot of those things. It didn't make sense to me, but it really is starting to make sense to me now. And for men, I can totally understand why it's something that they opt out of, because it really doesn't serve them much in the end. If you're having children, I see the value in it. I truly do. If you feel like you both are just going to be little gypsies and run all over the world together, then maybe not. But I see the difference for women and men now. And I definitely see why women push to want marriage. It makes sense to me, for sure.
I just want to add one thing that if you are considering this or you are on the fence is get a list and a piece of paper and just say, what are the benefits that will be there in my life 5-10 years if I make the decision to get married? What are the reasons? How will that make my relationship so different than if it just continues the way it is?
Yeah.
If you see those benefits to do that, really what it's going to come down to is just a set of values and beliefs that encompass that model, then you go for it. But if you have question and, you know, you're kind of second or third generation of people who are married, you might feel pressure from family. You really need to dig down deep and really do what's going to make you happy in the long run.
And vet properly, you know, ask questions about, you know, well, you know, these are things I see. Does this make a really good long-term partner, et cetera, et cetera? You know, confide in people that are aware, who aren't so ignorant in the fairy tale of it all. So reach out to people that are doing the work for sure that can help you along the way. So should we move on to the next one?
Sure.
Okay, how important are children? I think this is huge, 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 huge. I mean, they make or break a relationship, and even the type of parenting you choose to, you know, give as you have children, especially if they're completely different, if you come from different households. and the parenting styles were very different, that could make or break a relationship as well. So how do you feel about this one?
I think this is a really, really good question. And I was listening to a podcast, and it was a Tony Robbins podcast. And he ran into a friend of his at the airport who was an older gentleman, and he was in the line with a younger woman. And he just recently got married, and he kind of had him aside and was asking, like, hey, you got married, what's going on? Like, you plan on having kids? No, we're not having kids. We talked about that, but I told her, we get married, no kids. Well, his wife was talking to her, same questions, whatever, and it got to like, hey, you can have kids. Well, he said no, but we'll end up having kids later on. And sure enough, they ended up getting divorced because they just weren't in sync in that. So, how important are children? I really think what it comes down to, it's not a matter of how important are children, it's how important are children to you?
Yes.
If they are important, then that has to supersede, if you realize you're with somebody, number one, that has no interest in children, has to supersede that complacency of how long you've been together and all those other things. Because for me, I have 3 children and they're my everything. Mm-hmm. It's not the only thing that makes a relationship great, but it's an added benefit to a relationship, whether it's a marriage or whatever it might be. But definitely that is a very important question. And if it's a non-negotiable, make sure if from the beginning that you ask very specific questions, because we're talking about relationships here, that kind of get you, really understanding the value of the person you're connecting with, because there's nothing worse than not asking the hard questions right from the beginning, because you're fearful, you're afraid of the uncertain, you're afraid of it might be too sudden or soon. Well, just be clever about it. But make sure you ask, because there's nothing worse than getting heavily invested in an investment that's going to end up going down over the long run, and you're going to be at a loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it goes, likewise with, if you get older and you date someone who does have children. Is that something that you will be okay with too, right? Because there's a lot that comes along with that. So it's just internalizing how much responsibility do you want to take on? Because people get into the idealization, just like fairy tales of marriage, that, all right, I'm going to have a child and they're going to be like my little puppet, right? I'm going to dress them up, take pictures, put them online, and be cutesy until they can start talking. And I don't know how to deal with them anymore. And I'm just stressed out, So like marriage, the work starts once you have children. It's not the fairy tale of, oh, this is exactly what it's going to be like. They're going to be my best friend. I'm going to do things with them. They're never going to talk back. They're going to listen. And the aloofness, right? Where it's like, okay, your job as a parent is to ensure that you're guiding them enough so that they can stand on their own 2 feet at the end of the day when they, leave your house, and they don't need you in the capacity that they've needed you for so long, right? You've done your job. They can spread their wings and fly, So I think that idealization of wanting to play house is great. But when people actually get in that house, it's almost like their head just turns and the light bulb goes on. And it's like, what did I do? So be sure, understand the responsibilities that come with it, because as someone having 3 children, you guys work very hard with them. And I mean, it hasn't been easy throughout. You do the work, just like in a relationship. Alrighty, should we go to the last one here?
Let's do the last one.
Okay, the last one is, who do you spend most of your free time with? Why would you ask someone this, Sam?
I'm sorry?
Why would you ask someone this question? Who do you spend the most time with?
I think it's a very good question, because number one, if you're a family man or a woman and you love being around family, and you have someone who, I'm not going to say is self-absorbed, but likes to be alone and, maybe see the friend the odd time, but, is very hobby based, loves to go for bike rides, whatever it is, very involved in business, whatever it is that it might be. I mean, this is going to create a lot of conflict. It's very important. I mean, we've come from a family where family is everything. And it's probably the only thing is one of the most important qualities, for our parents and our grandparents and everything. But if they were on opposite spectrums, like even me and my wife, like family is very important. Being with friends is also very important. I think it's probably more so from my wife's side, my wife, who is a lot more engaged in that spectrum. Because I believe I'm a little bit more of an introvert when it comes to that stuff. But I think it's very important because it's kind of a telltale of outside of work, where you both are going to be and where's that happy place. Are you going to want to stay home, but yet they're always going to want to leave, go out, be with people, and that's conflicting with what makes you feel certain or what makes variety come about in your life. It's really going to help you to connect with their identity of what makes them where you're going to spend a lot of your time outside of your responsibilities.
Right. And like if you meet someone who likes to go out and go out for St. Patrick's Day and like all those types of things, go to pubs, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I love doing those things too, that could be an awesome compliment. But if you're someone who despises going to bars, despises, getting out of your pajamas past 6 o'clock, PM at night, then this could be an issue for you, right? So I think it's a very important question. And also, if you may not have a very big circle of friends or family or whatever, and if your significant other does, this could also create issues for you as well, being that introverted person. So it's understanding. Or if you're someone who sees it as a positive of getting you out and meeting people, then great. But you have to really weigh it out if this is something you want long term. Are there any other things that you want to say before we sign off here?
I just want to add one thing to that.
Yeah.
It's very important to get clear on that. And I'll tell you why. There are a lot of people that at some point who have conflicting needs with, who do they spend most of their free time with, is you can end up feeling second best to everybody else.
Yeah.
There are people that are in relationships that come up from different dynamics.
Correct.
Maybe you were brought up in a relationship where both spouses put one another first. But maybe you've now met somebody where their friends are just as important. Their siblings or their parents are just as important. And so now you're sharing that first best as being second best with everybody else.
Yeah.
And that can be conflicting, especially when it comes to a relationship, because when you are in a relationship, and despite what the factors are, your friends, your family, your kids, you're always supposed to put one another first. One another's needs before everyone and anyone else. 100%. And should never feel second best. And so that's a really good question. Who do you spend most of your free time with? I mean, to me, that equates to, are you both on par with that? So at some point, if you find out you're on opposite spectrums, that you could end up feeling second best, which can be very conflicting.
100%. So let's recap here. Number 1 was, how important is intimacy? Number 2, do you like adventure and spontaneity? 3, how important is marriage? 4, how important are children or the type of parenting? And lastly, how do you spend most of your free time, or who do you spend it with? Self, family, friends. So once again, thank you for watching the relationship series. We always talk about the matters of the heart and mind, and we will